The system looked like a graveyard. Broken pieces of starships floated in space like metal bones. Energy beams still fired between two massive fleets that had been fighting for 18 long months. Neither side was winning. Admiral stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sovereign's Pride. His blue-scaled hands gripped the railing as he watched another destroyer explode in the distance. They had gotten better at targeting their weak spots. Too much better. "Sir, we've lost the Night Hunter," his tactical officer reported. The young's voice shook. "That's our third destroyer this week." His tail twitched with frustration. The hegemony had sent him here with 200 ships and clear orders: take control of the mining zone. The asteroids here contained rare metals that both empires needed. Simple mission. It should have been over in weeks. But they had arrived at the same time with their own fleet. General was a smart commander who knew how to fight. Now both sides were stuck, bleeding ships and crew with no end in sight. On the other side of the battlefield, General faced the same problem. The large, insect-like creature stood in his command center, his 4 arms working different control panels. His compound eyes could see multiple screens at once, but none of them showed good news. "General, they are moving their battle cruisers into attack formation," his aide buzzed through mandibles. "Should we prepare defensive positions?" Clicked his claws in thought. The same formation they used last month, and the month before. They're running out of ideas just like us. The truth was simple and terrible. Both sides were losing this war. Not to each other, but to time and resources. Every day brought more dead soldiers and destroyed ships. Every week brought angry messages from their home governments demanding results. Had started this campaign with high hopes. The collective needed those mining rights. Their growing population required the rare metals found only in places like the system. But 18 months later, they'd spent more resources fighting than the mines could produce in 10 years. The battle had settled into a deadly routine. Both fleets stayed in defensive positions, taking shots when they could. Sometimes one side would try a big attack, but the other side always fought them back. The space between the fleets was filled with debris from hundreds of destroyed ships. "Sir," sensor operator suddenly called out, "I'm reading a new contact dropping out of hyperspace, edge of the system." Turned to the main screen. A single ship appeared where before there had been empty space. It was smaller than his battle cruisers, with a design he didn't recognize. The ship looked simple, almost crude compared to or vessels. Analysis demanded. "Unknown configuration, sir. Energy readings are strange. I've never seen power signatures like this." The sensor operator's scales were turning pale with confusion. "Sir, they're broadcasting a message." The main screen changed to show text in perfect script. "This is the UES retribution. We are responding to distress calls from this sector." His blood went cold. UES could only mean one thing. "Human ship," he whispered. Across the battlefield, General was reading the same message in his own language. His aide was buzzing with nervous energy. "General, what are humans? Our database has limited information." Had access to better intelligence than his aide. He knew enough about humans to be worried. They were newcomers who had only learned to travel between stars 30 years ago. Most galactic powers ignored them as primitive, but the reports had read painted a different picture. Human mercenaries fought without fear of death. Human traders somehow made impossible deals work. Human explorers went to places that killed everyone else and came back alive. They were unpredictable in ways that made military planners nervous. "Alert all ships," ordered. "A human war vessel has entered the. All captains are to consider this a new tactical situation." The message went out across the fleet. On ship after ship, commanders looked at their screens in confusion. One human ship against 200 vessels. It seemed like a joke. But Admiral had not survived 40 years of military service by ignoring threats. He'd read the classified reports. Humans didn't fight the way other species did. They had ideas that no sane military mind would consider. General was sending the same alert to his fleet. The ships formed defensive positions, their weapons turning toward the single human vessel, but knew this was not a normal situation. The human ship moved slowly toward the center of the system. It didn't approach either fleet directly. Instead, it took a position exactly between them, as if the single vessel could somehow keep two armies apart. "Sir, we're receiving another transmission," the communications officer reported. This time, the message appeared on screens across both fleets at the same time. The text was simple and direct. "This conflict ends now. You have 72 hours to begin withdrawal procedures. Any ship that fires on civilian targets, neutral vessels, or our ship will be considered hostile." Silence filled both command centers. A single human ship was giving orders to two massive fleets. The sheer audacity of it left both commanders speechless. "Is this some kind of joke?" Tactical officer asked. But was not laughing. Neither was General. Both commanders had fought enough battles to recognize confidence when they saw it. The humans weren't bluffing. They had a plan. "Sir, should we respond?" asked Aide. The general's claws clicked rapidly as he thought. His first instinct was to laugh at the human demand, but something in the message's tone made him hesitate. Humans had entered this system with one ship against impossible odds. That meant they either had a death wish or knew something nobody else did. Admiral was having the same thoughts. In his experience, warriors who entered hopeless battles usually had tricks up their sleeves. The question was, what could one human ship do against 200 alien vessels? "Open a channel to General," ordered. It would be the first time the two commanders had spoken directly in months. Once image appeared on his screen, both aliens stared at each other for a moment. Then they spoke at the same time. "What do you think of this human situation?" The irony was not lost on either of them. After 18 months of trying to kill each other, they were talking because of one small ship with a crew they knew nothing about. "I think," General said slowly, "that we are about to learn why the galaxy's military journals have started publishing articles about human warfare." Admiral nodded. "Agreed, and I have a feeling we won't like the lesson." Captain stood in the center of the UES Retribution's bridge, watching the two alien fleets on her main screen. 847 humans against roughly 40,000 alien soldiers. The odds were terrible, but had faced worse. "Status report," she called out. "All systems green, Captain," replied her first officer, Commander James Park. "We're holding position between both fleets. No one's shot at us yet." "Nodded. Give me a full tactical analysis of both forces." Her crew got to work. The bridge of the Retribution looked nothing like the grand command centers of the alien ships. Everything was designed for function, not show. Screens displayed data in simple formats. Officers spoke quietly and efficiently. Lieutenant Sarah looked up from her console. "Captain, I've been monitoring their communications for the past hour. Both sides are confused about our presence here." "Good. Confusion makes people think before they act." Walk to the tactical display. "What do we know about their commanders?" "Admiral of the has 40 years of military experience," reported Intelligence Officer Martinez. "He's known for careful planning and defensive strategies. General of the is younger but has won several major campaigns through aggressive attacks." Studied the fleet positions. Both sides had settled into long-range fighting. They were afraid to get too close because that would mean heavy losses. Instead, they stayed far apart and took careful shots. It was the kind of warfare that could last forever. "Captain," communications officer spoke up, "we're getting data requests from both fleets. They want to know about our ship specs, crew size, and weapons." "Tell them we're responding to distress calls, as stated in our initial message. Nothing more." had been fighting in space for 15 years. She'd started as a fighter pilot and worked her way up to commanding one of humanity's ships. The retribution was small compared to alien dreadnoughts, but it carried technology that no other species had developed. "Ma'am," said, "I'm detecting some interesting communication patterns between the alien fleets. It looks like their commanders are starting to talk to each other." "About us, I assume," smiled. "Nothing brings enemies together like a common mystery." The truth was that humans had been preparing for this kind of situation for years. When humanity first made contact with alien civilizations, they quickly learned something important. Most alien species fought wars the same way. They built big ships with big guns and tried to destroy each other until one side gave up. Humans had different ideas about warfare. They'd learned hard lessons during centuries of fighting on Earth. The best way to win a war was to make the enemy not want to fight anymore. "Captain," Park said quietly, "do you really think we can stop this war with just one ship?" Looked at her first officer. Park was a good man who'd served with her for 3 years. Like most of her crew, he trusted her completely, but she could see doubt in his eyes. "Commander, how many ships did it take to end the war between Earth's North American Federation and the European Union?" Park thought for a moment. "None, ma'am. They stopped fighting when the orbital bombardment footage was released to the public." "Exactly. Sometimes the best weapon is information, turned back to the main screen. What we're seeing here is a classic stalemate. Both sides are stuck, but neither wants to admit it. They're fighting because they can't figure out how to stop." On the flagship, Admiral was reading intelligence reports about humans. What he found made him increasingly uncomfortable. Humans had only been in space for 30 years, but they'd already fought in a dozen conflicts across the galaxy. They never used big fleets or super weapons. Instead, they won through methods that other species found hard to understand. In the Rigel system, human mercenaries had ended a civil war by proving that both sides were being manipulated by weapons dealers. On Gamma Station, human negotiators had stopped a trade dispute by showing all parties a better way to make money. Every time, humans solved problems instead of just winning fights. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "I've found something interesting. Captain, the human commander, has a reputation for ending conflicts quickly. She's never lost a campaign, but she's also never fought a traditional battle." Scales darkened. "What does that mean?" "Unknown, sir. Human military doctrine is classified, but observers report that they focus on what they call asymmetric solutions." General was reading similar reports. His compound eyes could process multiple data streams at once, and none of them made him feel better. "General," his aide buzzed, "the human ship is scanning both our fleets, but it's not military scanning. It looks more like intelligence gathering." His claws clicked nervously. "What kind of intelligence?" "Communications, supply lines, troop movements, but also stranger things. They're accessing our personnel databases, news feeds from our home worlds, even commercial shipping records." "How is that possible?" "Unknown, sir. Human computer systems appear to operate on different principles than ours." The truth was that human technology had developed along different paths than alien science. While other species focused on building bigger and more powerful ships, humans had concentrated on information systems and electronic warfare. A human ship could hack into alien networks in ways that no one expected. Walked among her bridge crew, checking their work. Her officers were busy gathering data on both alien fleets, not just military information but everything. Supply records, communications logs, personnel files, even social media posts from soldiers' families back home. "Captain," Martinez called out, "I've found something interesting. Both fleets have been here longer than planned. Supply lines are stretched thin and morale is dropping." "Good, what else?" The asteroid mining rights they're fighting over might not be worth as much as both sides think. I'm detecting signs that the asteroids have been secretly mined by automated systems. Raised an eyebrow. Someone's been stealing from both sides. Looks like it, ma'am. The mining company that owns this system has been using robot ships to strip the asteroids while both fleets were fighting. Lieutenant spoke up from her station. Captain, I'm also picking up communications from both fleets to their home governments. Both sides are under pressure to end this war quickly. Nodded, the picture was becoming clear. Two tired fleets, fighting over resources that might already be gone, under pressure from home to achieve something. It was exactly the kind of situation humans were good at resolving. All right, people, announced. We have 72 hours to convince two alien armies to go home. Time to show them why picking a fight with humans is a bad idea. What's the plan, Captain? Park asked. Smiled. We're going to give them the information they need to make smart decisions, whether they want it or not. She turned to her communications officer. Prepare a message to both fleet commanders. Tell them that in 72 hours, we're going to broadcast a complete analysis of this conflict to every news network in the galaxy. We'll include documentation of everything that's happened here, including any war crimes committed by both sides. The bridge crew exchanged glances. That was not what they'd expected. Ma'am, Park said carefully, that sounds more like journalism than military action. Commander, replied, sometimes the best way to end a war is to make sure everyone knows the truth about it. The first attack came 12 hours after the human ultimatum. General decided to test the human resolve by launching a small strike against supply ships. It was a routine move, the kind both sides had been making for months. Captain watched the fighters move into attack formation. Weapons, are you ready? Yes, ma'am, replied weapons officer. But Captain, they're not targeting us. Not yet, but they ignored our warning about hostile actions. His voice was calm. Time to teach them what human warfare looks like. Launch the ghosts. His fingers moved across his controls. 4 objects shot out from the retribution toward the attack group. On alien sensors, they looked like standard torpedoes. Fast-moving, well-armed, heading straight for the fighters. The pilots reacted exactly as expected. They split their formation and began evasive maneuvers. Point defense guns tracked the incoming weapons. Everything was going according to normal space combat procedures. Then the torpedoes vanished. Not exploded, not destroyed. They simply disappeared from every sensor screen as if they had never existed. What just happened? Demanded the lead pilot. His wingman checked his instruments twice. Sir, the torpedoes just stopped existing. Back on the retribution was smiling. Ghosts deployed successfully, Captain. Electronic countermeasures are active. The ghost torpedoes weren't really weapons. They were sophisticated decoy systems designed to confuse alien sensors. While the aliens looked for weapons that weren't there, the real attack was happening somewhere else entirely. Had been watching the debris field between the two fleets. Months of fighting had left thousands of pieces of destroyed ships floating in space. Metal chunks, broken components, even entire hull sections drifted in slowly moving clouds. Navigation, select target debris. Pieces roughly 2 meters in length, metallic composition. Ma'am, I count 47 suitable objects. Good. Weapons, prepare kinetic bombardment. Use the debris as projectiles. The Retribution's tractor beams reached out and grabbed chunks of wreckage. The ship's computers calculated trajectories, accounting for gravity, rotation, and the movement of enemy vessels. Then the beams launched the debris like bullets from a gun. General was still trying to understand what had happened to his fighters when his ship shook from a massive impact. Alarms started blaring across the bridge. Report, he buzzed. Sir, we've been hit by debris. His tactical officer sounded confused. A piece of wreckage just smashed into our port shield generator. Debris doesn't move that fast or that accurately. No, sir, it doesn't, but sensor logs confirm it. A chunk of metal from an old destroyer just hit us with the force of a cruise missile. His compound eyes studied the tactical display. The human ship was sitting exactly where it had been, showing no signs of having fired weapons. But somehow, pieces of the battlefield itself were being turned into projectiles. Sir, incoming transmission from the human ship. His face appeared on its main screen. She was sitting in what looked like a normal captain's chair, not the elaborate command throne that most alien leaders preferred. General, she said politely, your fighters attacked neutral shipping in violation of our agreement. That was your warning shot. The next one will be aimed at something important. The transmission ended before could respond. Admiral watched the attack on the ship with growing concern. He'd been a military commander long enough to recognize new tactics when he saw them. The humans weren't fighting like any species he knew. Sir, his communications officer called out, we're receiving a direct transmission. It's addressed to you personally. Frowned from the human ship. No, sir, from someone calling himself Lieutenant Martinez. The signal is coming through our own internal communication system. That was impossible. The fleet used encrypted military channels. No outside force could access them without physical connection to their ships. Put it through. A human voice spoke in perfect language. Admiral, this is Lieutenant Martinez of the UES Retribution. I hope you're having a pleasant day. His tail twitched. How are you accessing our communications? We're very good with computers, Admiral. I'm calling to discuss your tactical situation. Specifically, the fact that your supply ships are running low on fusion cores. The Admiral's scales went pale. Fusion core levels were classified information. Only his senior staff should know those numbers. I have detailed analysis of your fleet's supply situation, if you're interested, the human continued. Also complete records of your communications with command. Would you like me to explain why your government is lying to you about the mining rights in this system? The channel went silent, stood motionless for several seconds, then turned to his security chief. How did they access our communications? Unknown, sir. We're running full diagnostics now, but our systems show no signs of intrusion. What didn't know was that human computer technology was based on quantum processing systems that operated differently than alien computers. While most species focused on building faster processors, humans had developed ways to make computers think more creatively. A human AI could find security holes that alien programmers never imagined. Walked among her crew, checking their progress. Each station was working on a different aspect of the psychological campaign. Martinez, how's the intelligence analysis going? Very well, Captain. I've mapped out the complete command structure of both fleets. I know who's married, who has children, who's worried about promotions, and who's questioning this war. What about communications monitoring? I'm intercepting everything, ma'am. Personal messages, official reports, even informal conversations. Both sides are more worried than they're admitting. Nodded, prepare the next phase. I want every soldier on both fleets to receive a personal message. Ma'am looked confused. Find out their names, their home planets, their families. Then send each of them a message explaining exactly why they're fighting and who's profiting from it. The idea was simple but terrifying. Most soldiers fought because they trusted their commanders and believed in their cause. But what happened when they learned the truth about the conflict? What happened when they discovered their leaders had lied to them? Within 6 hours, 40,000 alien soldiers received personal messages in their own languages. The messages contained detailed information about the system, the mining rights, and the political decisions that had led to war. Each message was customized for the individual soldier, referencing their home planet, their family, and their personal concerns. But the messages also contained something else, evidence that their commanders had been keeping important information secret, proof that both sides were fighting over something that might not even exist anymore. On the cruiser night strike, Gunner Third Class read his message 3 times before showing it to his bunkmate. It says here that the asteroids we're fighting for were secretly mined out 3 months ago by automated ships from the same company that's selling weapons to both sides. His friend looked at the data files attached to the message. This can't be real. The human ship has proof, video recordings, financial records, everything. Similar conversations were happening on ships across both fleets. Soldiers were asking questions they'd never asked before. If the war was about resources that were already gone, why were they still fighting? If the mining company was making money from both the stolen asteroids and the weapons sales, who was really winning this conflict? General stood in his command center, watching his own soldiers lose faith in their mission. Morale reports were coming in from every ship, and they were all bad. "Sir," his aide buzzed nervously, "the crew is asking questions about our orders." "What kind of questions?" "They want to know if it's true that we're fighting over empty asteroids. They want to know if the human information is accurate." His claws clicked rapidly. He'd been a general long enough to know that doubt spread faster than disease in a military unit. If his soldiers stopped believing in their mission, the war would be over regardless of what they did. Admiral was facing the same problem. His intelligence chief had just confirmed that much of the human information was accurate. The asteroids had been secretly mined. The mining company was selling weapons to both sides. The war they'd been fighting for 18 months was built on lies. "Sir," his communications officer reported, "we're receiving another transmission from Captain." His image appeared on screens across both fleets simultaneously. She looked tired but determined. "Admirals, generals, soldiers of both fleets," she began. "You now have the information your leaders kept from you. You know the truth about this conflict. You have 48 hours remaining to begin withdrawal procedures." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "We humans have a saying, the truth will set you free, but first it will make you angry. Use that anger wisely." 24 hours before the human deadline, both alien commanders made the same decision. They would ignore the human ultimatum and continue the war. Neither admiral nor general could afford to look weak in front of their soldiers and governments. "Prepare all ships for coordinated attack," ordered. "We'll deal with the first, then handle the human problem." General gave similar orders to his fleet. "Ready all weapons. We'll eliminate the human ship, then finish off the..." Both commanders expected the humans to respond with desperate military action. They were prepared for missile attacks, electronic warfare, even kamikaze runs. What they got instead was something no military academy had ever taught them to handle. Captain activated Protocol 7. "Begin wide-spectrum broadcast," commanded. "All galactic communication networks, emergency channels, diplomatic frequencies, and civilian news feeds." "Aye, ma'am, broadcasting on all channels." "Martinez, upload the complete intelligence package. Every document, every recording, every piece of evidence we've gathered." "Package ready for transmission, Captain." Took a deep breath. What she was about to do would end the war, but it would also change how the galaxy thought about human military capabilities forever. Execute Protocol 7, full disclosure. The data burst that left the retribution contained 18 months' worth of evidence. Every battle, every strategy meeting, every secret communication between commanders and their governments. The humans had recorded everything since entering the system, but they'd also hacked into historical records going back to the beginning of the conflict. The information spread across the galaxy at the speed of light. News networks, diplomatic corps, and military intelligence agencies on dozens of worlds received detailed documentation of the war. But this wasn't just raw data. The humans had organized everything into a clear, damning narrative. On Zephyr Prime, the capital world of the hegemony, government officials watched in horror as their secret communications played on public news channels. Citizens learned that their leaders had known about the mining company's deception for months, but continued the war to avoid political embarrassment. The collective faced the same exposure. Their home worlds saw recordings of general conversations with political leaders, discussing how to spin the war for maximum propaganda value. The public discovered that their sons and daughters had been dying to protect a handful of politicians' careers. But the human data dump went deeper than simple political corruption. Steam had documented every war crime committed by both sides: attacks on civilian ships, execution of prisoners, bombardment of neutral stations. The evidence was overwhelming and impossible to deny. "Sir," communications officer reported with a shaking voice, "we're receiving emergency transmissions from Zephyr Prime. The planetary government wants an immediate explanation." Admiral stared at the messages flooding in from his home world. Politicians, military leaders, and citizens were all demanding answers. How had humans obtained classified military communications? Why had the war continued after both sides knew the truth about the asteroids? What was planning to do about the documented war crimes? "Sir," his aide added quietly, "there are already protests outside the Defense Ministry. The families of dead soldiers are demanding answers." General was facing an even worse situation. The collective had a more democratic government than the hegemony, and public opinion mattered more. His soldiers were receiving messages from their families asking why they were still fighting a war based on lies. "General," his aide buzzed nervously, "Fleet Command is ordering us to explain our actions. They want to know why we haven't reported the human intelligence." "Because we didn't believe it," replied. But even as he said it, he knew how weak it sounded. Professional military officers were supposed to verify intelligence, not ignore it because it was inconvenient. Watch the chaos unfold from the Retribution's bridge. Communication channels across both fleets were lighting up with messages from home. Politicians demanding explanations, families asking questions, news reporters requesting interviews. "Captain," Martinez reported, "I'm monitoring internal communications on both fleets. Morale is collapsing. Some ships are reporting crew members refusing to follow orders." "Good. What's the situation on the galactic news networks?" "The story is spreading fast, ma'am. Every major network is running special reports on the conflict. The Galactic Council is calling for an emergency session." Nodded. The Galactic Council rarely involved itself in local conflicts, but war crimes evidence changed everything. Both the hegemony and collective were council members. If found guilty of systematic war crimes, they could face trade sanctions, diplomatic isolation, or even military intervention. "Ma'am," communications officer spoke up, "I'm receiving surrender requests from individual ships in both fleets. Captains are asking for safe passage home." This was the moment had been working toward. Not military defeat, but moral collapse. When soldiers stopped believing in their cause, wars ended regardless of who had bigger guns. "Open a channel to both fleet commanders," ordered. Her image appeared on the command bridges of both alien flagships simultaneously. Behind her, the bridge of the Retribution looked calm and professional. No alarms, no panic, just humans doing their jobs. "Admiral General," she began, "you now understand what humans mean by asymmetric warfare. We don't fight ships, we fight lies." Both alien commanders stared at her in silence. "Your soldiers have learned the truth about this conflict. Your governments are facing public protests. The Galactic Council is investigating war crimes charges. You can continue fighting if you choose, but you're no longer fighting each other. You're fighting reality. Pause to let that sink in. You have 1 hour to declare a ceasefire and begin withdrawal procedures. After that, we release Phase 2 of our intelligence package. Admiral found his voice first. What's in Phase 2? Personal financial records for every politician and military leader who profited from this war. Bank accounts, property purchases, stock investments, everything. The channel went silent. Both commanders realized that wasn't just threatening to expose their governments. She was threatening to expose them personally. You see, admirals, continued, humans believe that people who start wars for profit should be held accountable, especially when those wars kill innocent people. General's compound eyes focused on his calm face. How long have you been planning this? Since we entered the system. Humans don't improvise military operations. We research, we plan, and we execute. You've had 3 days to experience human intelligence capabilities. Would you like to test our military capabilities as well? The question hung in space like a weapon. Both alien commanders knew their fleets were larger and more heavily armed than the single human ship. But they also knew that humans had already demonstrated abilities that no one understood. What other surprises did they have? I need to consult with my government, said finally. So do I, added. Shook her head. Admirals, your governments don't control this situation anymore. Your soldiers do. Look at your own crew. Ask them if they want to keep fighting a war that was started by lies and maintained by greed. The transmission ended. Both alien commanders stood in their command centers, facing the hardest decision of their careers. They could order their fleets to attack the human ship, but their crews might refuse to obey. They could try to continue the war, but their governments were already under pressure to end it. Or they could accept the reality that a single human ship had just defeated 2 of the galaxy's most powerful fleets without firing a shot. Admiral looked around his bridge. His officers were avoiding eye contact, studying their instruments, waiting for orders they hoped would never come. These were good soldiers who had served with honor, but they could no longer pretend this war made sense. Communications, he said quietly, prepare a message to all ships. We're standing down. On the flagship, General made the same decision. All ships, this is General. Cease all military operations immediately. Begin preparation for departure from the system. Watch both surrender messages appear on her screen. Well done, people, she announced to her crew. War's over. Commander Park looked up from his station. That's it, no final battle. Smiled. James, the final battle happened in the minds of 40,000 soldiers who decided to stop fighting for a lie. That's the only battle that really matters. 3 days after the ceasefire, the system was almost empty. Most of the alien ships had already jumped to hyperspace, carrying their crews home to face questions from angry governments and grieving families. Only a few vessels remained. The UES Retribution, 2 diplomatic ships, and a small fleet of neutral vessels bringing humanitarian aid. Captain stood in Conference Room 2 aboard her ship, looking across a simple metal table at 2 aliens who had been trying to kill each other for 18 months. Admiral's blue scales had dulled with exhaustion, while General's compound eyes darted nervously between and the commander. Said, pouring coffee from a simple pot, "Would you like to try human coffee? It's quite good." Both aliens declined. They were still trying to understand how a casual conversation with their enemy could be more frightening than any battle they'd fought. "Captain," Admiral said carefully, "I must ask, how long have humans been planning this type of warfare?" Sipped her coffee and considered the question. "We've been fighting wars for thousands of years, Admiral. We've learned that the hardest part isn't defeating enemies. It's making them stop being enemies." She gestured to a display screen showing news footage from across the galaxy. Protests on both alien home worlds. political leaders resigning in disgrace, families demanding investigations into military spending. Your people are asking the right questions now. Why did this war start? Who benefited? How can we prevent it from happening again? General shifted uncomfortably. Captain, my government wants to know how you obtained classified military communications. Smiled, we asked nicely. The joke fell flat. Both alien commanders had read the intelligence reports about human-computer capabilities. Their security experts were still trying to figure out how one human ship had penetrated military networks that were supposed to be impossible to hack. More seriously, continued, humans approach information warfare differently than most species. You see computer security as building walls. We see it as understanding how minds work. Your encryption was excellent. Your social engineering was terrible. She pulled out a simple tablet and showed them a chart. 40% of your classified communications were sent by officers who used their children's names as passwords. 30% used birth dates. The rest fell to standard social manipulation techniques. Admiral's tail twitched. Social manipulation. We called your communications officers pretending to be technical support staff. We sent them messages that looked like they came from their commanders. We found their social media accounts and learned about their families, their hobbies, their fears. Pause to let that information sink in. Your people want to believe they're fighting for good reasons. When we showed them proof that they weren't, they chose truth over orders. That's not a military defeat. That's a moral awakening. The meeting was interrupted by a communications officer. Captain, we're receiving a message from Galactic Council Command. They want to speak with all 3 commanders. Nodded, put them through. The screen changed to show Ambassador N, the Council's chief military liaison. The elderly diplomat looked tired and worried. Captain, Admiral, General, he began formally. The Council has completed its preliminary review of the evidence provided by the human vessel. We have questions. Stood and clasped her hands behind her back. Ask your questions, Ambassador. First, how did a single human ship obtain intelligence that escaped our notice for 18 months? We looked where you didn't think to look. Commercial shipping records, social media posts, mining company financial reports. The evidence was hiding in public. Ambassador N's expression remained neutral. Second question. Why did humanity intervene in a conflict that didn't involve your species? Had expected this question. It was the one that would determine how the galaxy viewed humanity going forward. Ambassador, we received distress calls from civilian ships caught in this. Merchant vessels, refugee transports, medical ships. Both fleets were treating them as acceptable losses. We don't consider innocent deaths to be acceptable. But surely, the appropriate response would have been to contact Council peacekeepers. Shook her head. The Council has been aware of this conflict for over a year. Your response was to issue diplomatic protests while people died. We prefer direct action. The ambassador's feathers ruffled slightly. Captain, the Council is concerned about the precedent this sets. If any species can intervene in local conflicts using information warfare, then maybe military leaders will think twice before starting wars based on lies. Finished. Is that such a bad thing? Admiral spoke up. Ambassador, with respect, the humans didn't start this conflict. They ended it. My own investigation has confirmed that their intelligence was accurate. We were fighting over nothing while civilian ships died in crossfire. General nodded agreement. The Council should be thanking Captain, not questioning her methods. Appreciated the support from her former enemies, but she knew the real issue. The galactic powers were scared. For centuries, they had fought wars using massive fleets and overwhelming firepower. Now humans had demonstrated that a single ship with the right information could defeat entire armies. Ambassador, said calmly, I understand the Council's concerns. Let me address them directly. Humans don't want to rule the galaxy or dominate other species. We want to prevent unnecessary wars. If that makes some governments uncomfortable, perhaps they should examine their own policies." The ambassador was silent for several moments. "Captain, the Council would like to discuss human military capabilities in more detail. Would you be willing to attend a formal briefing?" Knew what that meant. The galactic powers wanted to understand human warfare so they could counter it. She also knew there was no point in refusing. Humans would have to deal with this situation eventually. "Of course, Ambassador. We'll prepare a full presentation on human military doctrine." The transmission ended, turned back to the two alien commanders. "You'll be receiving new orders soon. The Council will want detailed reports on everything that happened here. I suggest you be honest about what you learned." Admiral looked puzzled. "What exactly did we learn, Captain?" Walked to the window overlooking space, where two fleets had been trying to destroy each other just days earlier. Now there was only empty space, and debris being collected by cleanup crews. "You learned that humans don't fight the way other species expect. We don't win wars by destroying enemies. We win by making wars unnecessary." She turned back to face them. "You also learned that the truth is more powerful than any weapon. When your soldiers knew the real reason for this conflict, they chose to stop fighting. No force in the galaxy could have made them continue." General's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "Captain, will humans intervene in other conflicts?" "When innocent people are dying for preventable reasons, yes. When military leaders lie to their own soldiers, yes. When wars continue because no one wants to admit they made a mistake, absolutely yes." Smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Humans have a long history of fighting necessary wars. We also have experience with unnecessary wars, and we know the difference. The galaxy is about to learn that difference too." 2 hours later, stood on the bridge of the Retribution as it prepared to jump to hyperspace. Commander Park approached with a data pad. "Captain, we're receiving new orders. 3 different systems are reporting military conflicts. Command wants us to investigate." Looked at the star charts showing the new problem areas. "How many ships are involved in these conflicts?" 230 ships in the Vega system, 400 in the sector, and over 600 in the dispute." Nodded. "Standard pattern. Large fleets, long stalemates, civilian casualties being ignored by everyone involved." She walked to her captain's chair and sat down. "Mr. Park, plot a course for the Vega system. Maximum speed." "Aye, ma'am. What about the other conflicts?" Smiled. "We'll get to them, one war at a time." As the Retribution prepared to jump to hyperspace, its communications officer prepared the standard message that would soon become famous across the galaxy. "This is the UES Retribution. We are responding to distress calls from this sector." In military academies across dozens of worlds, that message would soon be studied as the most feared transmission in galactic history. Not because of the destruction it promised, but because of the truth it delivered. Settled into her chair as stars began to blur outside the viewports. Somewhere in the Vega system, military commanders were about to learn why picking a fight with humans was a very bad idea. The galaxy was changing. Wars would still happen, but they would no longer happen in the shadows. Military leaders would no longer be able to hide behind classified information and political doublespeak. Soldiers would no longer die for lies. Because somewhere out there, a human ship was always listening, and humans had very strong opinions about unnecessary wars. Closed her eyes as the Retribution jumped to hyperspace, carrying 47 humans toward their next lesson in galactic military education. "Alert! A human war vessel has entered the..." The warning would soon be heard across the galaxy, and every military commander who heard it would have to ask themselves a very simple question. Are we fighting for the right reasons? Because if they weren't, the humans would make sure everyone knew about it.